All these little dogs were going to get killed, and now they're getting shuffled off to some other dimension that we will see sometime in Season 9.
I'm going to go abuse a dog today.
Welcome back to Nonsense, I'm Chris, and it's honestly really funny they followed through on something so few people would have known about or remembered. It was another great episode though. Calling back such an early character I think fits this season's vibes. The early ratings seem pretty strong too, so let's hope it stays that way as we break the episode down. Starting with the title, which is obviously an Jer-Bud reference, but the episode itself only somewhat resembles that plot. In this case, the activity the dog is stepping up to play is breeding pets for specific extreme traits. The joke obviously being that if you find any of this off-putting or distasteful, then you should also find it off-putting or distasteful in dogs. More than Jer-Bud though, the episode is actually parodying 2 other movies, going along with Dan Harmon's rule about only doing parodies if it's 3 or more properties. The other 2 are Lucy, Jerry's storyline being an alternate version of how ScarJo's titular character gets the drugs into her system, then progressively becomes more and more affected by the substance, represented by a percentage that in the movie represents how much of her brain she's using, but in the show represents what percentage of Jerry is worms. Pretty direct reference in how they do the percentages though, and secondly is Planet of the Apes, with how the humans are pets. Also kind of Fantastic Planet too, I guess. The episode opens on the Beths having breakfast cereal together in a shot similar to this one in last season's Kid Beth episode. I kinda wish they had made it the same kind of cereal, to be honest. Jerry's nervous about a job interview, so Space Beth offers him some worry worms, which she says she's on right now. And she acts like it's just like being high, basically. Jerry doesn't want
breakfast drugs? We doing breakfast drugs? Deal me in.
And Morty's on his way off to a sleepover with an unannounced friend. Jerry chooses to take a worry worm in the end while Rick self-burns.
Is this what it feels like to have friends? Wouldn't know.
He tells Morty he'll pick him up on Sunday, and we see Morty's entered Snowball's dimension from the end of Season 1, Episode 2, who, if you recall, was sent with all his smart dog friends over to this new dimension. After his statue, there's also these back here, which depict Snowball carrying another dog who seems to have died. We can see they really have changed the designs of Rick's mech suits. When it cuts to this angle of Snowball greeting Morty, there's this fountain back here of Snowball peeing. In the close-up, we see they even updated the speaking thing. We cut to a statue of Snowball entering the dimension through the portal. Morty admires it in front of a food cart selling chicken chews in plastic bags. I think this is a federal building. It says Canis Unum, which I think is just supposed to be poor Latin for all dogs are one. This little chihuahua with glasses has a newspaper that says Who Let the Mups Out, obviously a play on Who Let the Dogs Out, because they call the pet humans Mups. This little guy's carrying a suitcase shaped like a bone. Morty's impressed with the monorail, which you can see doesn't have windows so that the dogs can hang their heads out as it goes. Morty's suddenly attacked by a Mupp. The same Mupp we see at the end is on the conference call with Jerry. He play stabs Morty with a toy spear before his owner picks him up and carries him away as Snowball approaches, explaining the Mupps are pet humans they bred from the species that lived here. And he's worried Morty's going to judge them, but Morty says he's seen much worse, which is definitely true. We see another Mupp playing with a toy spatula, always with the human toys, but the dog walking him is definitely based on this little one-eyed guy from the crew dogs shot at the end. I will point these out when I'm 100% sure, but most of the dogs are not in that shot. This giant mustache one back here is hilarious. I also love how his tongue's hanging out and how he has a spiky collar, whereas this guy has a harness. Snowball keeps talking about the Mupps, but Morty keeps refocusing on hanging out and how he doesn't care. We cut to them riding in the limo, and I love how the crosswalks are grass and have this robo-suit crossing sign. From inside the limo, we get a few frames of a fire hydrant they turned into a urinal, which is pretty funny. The thing this dog is playing fetch with is a toy smartphone. Snowball keeps talking about the Mupps, so Morty asks if they can just head back to his place and hang out. On their way in, the security huts are like mini dog houses. His gate also has a doggy door flap, which is funny. He's got a Snowball vanity plate too. The butler offers Morty a martini water bowl thing. We also see Snowball has kept his same second in command all this time, but some feral Mupps jump the fence, security darting them as they tackle Morty. Snowball again just keeps talking about how Morty must be judging them, despite Morty again just saying he doesn't care. He tasks one of his guys with taking Morty to the Mupp facility to prove their process is humane. We cut back to Jerry in his interview. The only meaningful detail in this guy's office is the picture of his wife, who we do meet later. Jerry Jerry acts super laid back, impressing the interviewer, and we smash cut to the 10% thing from Lucy. Jerry asks if they're working on any major marketing clients, and the guy says Nip Slip Vodka, and that if they land the account, they'll be doubling their revenue. Jerry recommends the slogan, "Drink Nip Slip," which is terrible, but the guy is just impressed by everything laid back Jerry does, so he loves it. The interview invites Jerry to the client meeting with Nip Slip's CEO, who's named
Carl Nip Slip.
Kinda makes me think of this.
We appreciate it very much, Tim Apple.
But the meeting is that night, and we cut to a laid-back Jerry jamming out to the terrible It's Friday song with lots of worm vials on the dash. He parks on the lawn, and a bunch more vials fall out as he gets up. The Beths come out worried he's overdoing it on the worms. Rick hilariously joins by portaling from the garage to the lawn. He scans Jerry, finding the worms have started eating his insides. Rick says he doesn't know anything about the worms, but SB says they can go to her dealer. We cut to the Mupp and Me Adoption Center, where the bushes and some architecture are bone-shaped. Inside, there's little human footprints as a trail, the way some places do little paw prints. We see a vending machine for pup formula, premium, organic, hypoallergenic, non-GMO. All the buzzwords the same way the pet brands do. There's a clothes shelf here with a banner above it next to a hats shelf whose banner has a Dr. Seuss hat. On the front desk, this coffee cup says World's Best Pooch, and there's a paw scanner and a slobbery tennis ball. They keep trying to excuse it all, and Morty finally comments they seem really ashamed of it all, but that he really doesn't care. They make him watch an educational video about it all, including an editor where you can select traits for your Mupp, including big ears, docile, light coat, hairless, male or female, then show a Mupp getting morphed to fit someone's requests, a mother crying for her baby, and all the while using cheery music and flowery transitions as the juxtaposition, the same way we really do act about our dogs, despite the fact that what we have done as a species to them, to breed them into the shapes they are, it's insane. It finally makes Morty feel uncomfortable, and they fail to cheer him up with his own Mupp, so we cut to him packing up his stuff at Snowball's mansion. There's an indoor fire hydrant with a monogrammed Snowball hand towel, a painting of when they arrived, and a treat jar next to one of those martini pet bowl cups. The bed is a giant dog bed complete with decorative bones etched into the wood. Snowball comes in excited and tail wagging until Morty says he's leaving and his tail falls down. Morty says bye, and from this angle we see the flower vase is full of chewing ropes. There's more toys down here next to some steps up to the bed, and a painting of a scenic fire hydrant. Snowball asks Morty to stay, insisting again that he's judging them too harshly, but Morty says they're still friends and he just wants to go home. He gets in the limo and the driver starts moving while Morty starts mumbling,
Please don't try to kill me. Please don't try to kill me. Please don't try to kill me.
but they get hit by another car and surrounded, so Morty runs for it. We see a tag for the Squirrel Mafia. I assume that's about this.
We need a quorum to pick a new pope in case the Exxon Monsanto thing falls through in Africa. That kid is watching us. Hey, kid, young man, come here, little boy.
Oh, fuck. Oh, fuck. Fuck me. Fuck me.
Oh, shit, Morty, what did you do? All right, Morty, pack your shit. You fucked with squirrels, Morty. We got a good 5 minutes before they're backing up on our ass, Morty. We have to pack up and move to a new reality, Morty. We're fucked over here because of these damn squirrels, Morty.
These weird vines are growing out of this building? He's approached by a few Mupps, but the feral ones show up and kill the pet ones. Afterwards, they approach Morty. We can see a tearaway flyer back here for poop. They say they want to take Morty, who responds saying he doesn't want to be part of any movement, but they drag him off anyways. We cut to everyone else but Summer, who seems to be completely absent this episode, as they portal into a seedy apartment hallway filled with glass cases containing various nondescript creatures. SB gets them through the door to her dealer, Sweet Marie, whose apartment is also full of nondescript creatures we can only assume she's also using for drugs, and specifically an alien cat and an alien parrot that are pretty sick looking. But SB tells Sweet Marie that Jerry's being overtaken by worms, and Marie just offers to split the profit from selling Jerry's new worms. They don't like the answer, so she calls in her security because she wants all the worms for herself, and everyone starts fighting, accidentally freeing the parrot, which good for that parrot. I hope this is its home world. Also, that little beak-having fish is cute. This little guy back here is the only one that moves around a bunch, and it's pretty cute. It kind of seems like it's trying to communicate. We'll get back to that later. Rick shoves Jerry out of the way, which for a split second Sweet Marie actually looks worried for him, but probably just for the merchandise. Rick robo-arms her away as SB casually tosses him a blade, showing that his connection with Evil Morty is not entirely unique. She might not be on the same level yet, but you do never know. Maybe she'll have her own portal color one day. Rick goes in for the kill, but she catches his arm, so he uses her as a bullet shield when the other guy starts shooting. SP complains her favorite dealer is dead and kills the shooter, and then in under 6 seconds this whole little story takes place, starting with Beth keeping this guy's gun aimed away from herself. The little crab guy signals to her with his claws. She sees and understands, grabs a pipe and breaks the glass to free it, and it attacks the guy, and after killing him, I think it was jumping not to attack Beth, but to ride her as a new friend, since it signaled to her first again, but Rick gets it with SB's knife, pinning it to the wall. He then grabs the blade for SB, and they realize Jerry made a run for it at some point since he doesn't want to give up the worms. They track him to a nearby subway where Rick says his tracker signal died, probably because the worms ate it. There's a guy sleeping, and instead of waking him up to ask if he's seen anything, Rick stabs him in the head with a memory display gun, which is pretty sick, and just another entry into Rick's many memory-based devices. They see that Jerry was acting weird in front of everyone. Rick says because the worms feed on anxiety and putting him in these situations makes him anxious. And they all realize he must be headed to the client meeting he had mentioned earlier. Also, I'm pretty sure Rick killed this guy. We see the feral humans dragging Morty into their nesting area. These kids are playing with the skull, and this lady is carrying her baby on her back like many primate species do. They drag him in front of their leader, a lady with a cool shawl thing and neckerchief. She speaks perfect English, and when Morty is relieved that they have a leader and says he doesn't want to get involved, she criticizes him for sitting on the sidelines. I guess they have sports since they have sports idioms. She tries to talk about the horrific lives they have, but Morty cuts her off saying he knows because he watched the Mupp video. She says about his use of the word Mupp,
Mupp is the language of the oppressor! You're still trapped in their way of thinking.
and this is the perfect moment to talk about, I guess, the larger message they're trying to send with this episode, obviously aside from the commentary on dog breeding, because the way they had her phrase that, asserting that he was trapped in a way of thinking rather than the obvious reality of him just being indifferent to suffering at this point.
Colonization, eugenics, hierarchies, above my pay grade.
Her phraseology is kind of aggressive in order to get the idea that Morty is meant to represent to seem more reasonable, which they just outright say in the end of the episode.
I never took a moral stance, though. I resisted it.
Really?
Couldn't pin me down to nothing. Totally sidelined it.
Because in this situation, he represents what Rick does a lot of the time, and what the creators behind the show definitely feel is core to their own identities. The idea that you can just not have a stance on something as an excuse, basically. They would never call it an excuse, that would be hurtful to them, but I've listened to, I believe, all of the available creator commentaries on the show, as well as a lot of the creators' other interviews and stuff, and they really do feel that way. It's why they even have Rick use the R slur and immediately justify it by having him say he values the differently abled, but just likes the word. Like they're trying to be removed from the conflict while maintaining a moral superiority about it, but that's just not how that works. You can't be fully aware of a societal problem, choose not to care about it, and still pretend to have moral superiority. You want to live your life the way you want to, without having to think about how other people less lucky than you might be suffering because it's easier for you to live that way. You want to use the word you like without thinking that maybe the family member of someone your slur applies to might be nearby and hurt by your words. And I get it, it's easier to ignore problems like this and convince yourself you've got nothing to do with it, and that activists are actually annoying for making you feel a little uncomfortable. That is easier than caring. Caring sucks. But don't hide behind the bullshit like this. Just say you don't care and own it for what it is. It's one of the few areas I don't love Harmon's take on personally, and kind of feels like opposite some of his life lessons he's learned over the years, but whatever. They wind up being found by the dogs and attacked though, while Morty overhears Snowball on comms telling his second-in-command to find Morty because he called them racist bigots. Which was obviously not true, and is just them again trying to hammer home the point that you can choose to be removed from an issue, and people saying you're bigoted in some way are just crazy. That's why they're having both sides of the conflict say the same things about Morty for wanting to stay out of the issue. I really think the writers view themselves as above it all, nobody criticize us at all because we refuse to take a stance outside of the stance that we're allowed to do or say whatever we want. That's the one stance we definitely have. It's not even a real world view. It's why in philosophy there are so many terms like the myth of neutrality or the neutrality fallacy or moral equivalence. Our choices, our actions elections are all we have. Sitting on the sidelines will always inherently benefit one side more than the other. Like Theodore Roosevelt said, as for neutrality, it is well to remember that it is never moral and may be a particularly mean and hideous form of immorality. But anyways, the leader winds up dying, and out of anger for being called a bigot, Morty kills the guy Snowball was talking to. As the leader dies, she tells Morty, who tries to hide from the responsibility, that he's in charge now. Morty says,
Kill that dog guy because I'm pissed at Snowball, not because of your conflict.
just to drive home his neutrality again, I guess. He gets in the robo-suit and the Ferals follow suit. He calls Snowball to tell him he's coming for him and launches an attack. We cut to that night as the nesting area is in shambles and they're planning an attack on Snowball's mansion. Morty screams some more about not being their leader and being neutral before we cut to Fancy's steakhouse, where Jerry just arrived for the client meeting. They smash cut 60% worm and Jerry introduces himself charmingly. He makes fun of this guy's toupee and orders them martinis, but it works. The guy loves him and says he'll sign the paperwork, but Jerry has to meet his board of directors first. They get on the CEO's jet where Jerry's piloting the plane and made his new boss bring his pregnant wife. Jerry rolls the plane and destroys the controls before telling his new boss's wife he's induced her labor and is going to deliver her baby on the crashing plane, which makes her fall in love with him somehow. She has the fastest birth in human history and names her Jerry, and the plane crashes. Meanwhile, Morty's mid-battle and gets the idea to recruit the Mups from the adoption factory place, so we cut back to the security desk in there we saw earlier, but from this angle we see the nameplate, which says Snarf Security. The puppy's watching like a traditional native type dance, but with dog toys, which is hilarious, but Morty and the Ferals break in to free all the Mups and give them weapons. But they just wind up hurting each other with them, Morty realizing his mistake right as the dogs catch up with them. So they head deeper into the facility and break out the back before we cut to them breaking through Snowball's front gate and smashing down his front door. Morty confronts him and they duke it out with a lot of Snowball's face all over the place and one statue of him riding a pig like a horse. They fight until Morty finally destroys his robo-suit with this meditating statue of Snowball back here. The guy really is obsessed with himself. Morty takes him out to the front of the mansion to speak to the fighters. He manages to get them to stop and listen, and they ask him to lead, but he says no, so they start fighting again. So Snowball guides him to their panic room, and we cut back to the crashed plane where Jerry takes his newfound Colt up to a water tower. He undresses and makes the other men do the same. It smash cuts to 100%, and Jerry starts vomiting, telling his minions to eat them. Rick, driving SP's ship, crashes into the water tower. He goes to help Jerry, but the minions stop him, saying Jerry's perfect and that he's hired and has the new Nipslip account too. As a result, his anxiety starts decreasing, and since the worms feed on anxiety, they start dying off. So they rush out of him and towards Rick, who apparently is nervous about Jerry not being around as much if he gets a job. Rick grabs the newly worm-free Jerry and his two followers and tosses a cool bubble machine out to trap the worms as they fly off to safety. The guys tell Jerry again they'll see him Monday for his new job and walk off before we cut to Morty and Snowball in his panic room, where we see a bunch of toys, a fire hydrant, and those gravity feeders. They talk it out, Snowball admitting he's ashamed of the human breeding, and Morty saying humans are ashamed of their breeding of dogs, but that they don't need to hate each other about it all. They walk out of the panic room as Rick portals in, asking why everything is destroyed. Morty explains and says,
Totally sidelined it.
Good boy.
And I love how Rick tussles his hair like a puppy, like he's trained him to be this way, which, yeah, is true. This season is pretty focused on their dynamic. I definitely feel like it's leading up to something. Morty asks if there's anything they can do here, though, and Rick suggests selling them the worms to eat their shame, which I guess won't explode like they did with Jerry because he was too full of anxiety. So now the dogs and the humans get along, thanks to drugs. After the credits, we see Jerry in his new office, where we see they really did use the drink vodka slogan. There's a picture of the family with Rick walking away, and the Hungry for Apples slogan from the Season 1 simulation episode. Lastly, we see he's on a conference call with the dog dimension where everyone gets along now because they're on worms all the time. And that's all for this episode. I honestly think this makes it 5 for 5 this season so far, though. The reviews up to this point seem to agree. Hopefully it stays that way. They may be going for a perfect game. I guess we'll see next week. Sorry for the slight delay on getting this one out. I had some technical difficulties, then went down one too many wiki holes during research, but I'll be back at the same time next week with a new episode, so don't forget to subscribe. If you noticed anything I missed or got wrong, please leave it in the comments so I can include it in my post-season update video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.
Good boy.